Hi, I'm Gokula Srinivasan Selvam, one of the top 32 change makers in the FAIR project. And the FAIR team has given me a challenge to talk about a topic which you're really passionate about. Me thinking what I'm really passionate about, I chose climate change. Why climate change? Climate is okay, so where did the change come from? Is a question, right? Who made that change? Is it me, you, everybody? Or is it a country or an unknown organization who's making that change to happen? Why am I so concerned is because we are basically changing the whole climate itself by that small changes we do. Who does those changes? This is a question that I arise. And another thing is that what would happen to a country if people and the nation itself doesn't follow any sustainable way of development at all? So what would happen in that scenario was the biggest question. And I was tasked with to find whether it's the government's problem or it is the people's problem, like we normal people problem, who contribute to the biggest changes. So I have a very interesting story on from a country from rags to riches, again to rags, to a country where people don't even want to visit again. What is that country? So the country's name is Nauru, world's richest country back in 1970s. Now at 2017, it is considered to be the poorest country. How did a world's richest country become the world's poorest country? It's going to be a very interesting story, and we have a lot more to learn from this. So the story goes that back in 1906, where the first German who found the value in the soil. So he found phosphates. So what were phosphates? Like phosphates were the raw materials that were used for manufacturing fertilizers for agricultural purposes. So it was more valued at that time, and so the Germans started their own company at Nauru. So their company was the Pacific Phosphate Company, and they were mining for a very long time. So when the World War One hit, the company was closed and the British dominated their land. So the British started their British Phosphate Commission was opened up. So after World War One, it was going on, and World War Two was triggered. Then at World War Two, the whole scenario itself changed because the country got its independence at 1968. So what did the country's government do? So at 1906 to 1968, it was a long span of time, right? They were mining so much for more than 60 plus years. So what did the government do? So the government didn't take any actions to limit the mining processes, but they ramped the process to like mine out everything. So they mined continuously. Then at 1975, they were declared to be the world's richest country after Kuwait, the world's second richest country in the world. And it per capita income was around $15,000. Like if you compare that much of money to current day, it's almost $4 million. So they were that rich. So even after that, did they stop mining? No, they didn't. Did the government take any initiative to do a lot of large scale investments or long term investments? Because it's barren land, and nobody has ever been there before. It's a very small land. So has the government done anything? No. So they lavishly spent on everything like housing, they bought an airport, and they just bought real estates everywhere across the globe. And they had no idea of stopping the mining activity itself. So at one point, the mining resources itself got exhausted. After the nation's resources got depleted, the expenditure of the nation was still high. So they started taking loans from other countries. At one point, what happened is that their debt has become so high that the international creditors seized all their real estate portfolios, including the Nauru's airlines itself. And so at one phase, they entered bankruptcy. So they literally lost what all they earned from the richness itself. Now, how is Nauru in the current days? So Nauru is a place where over 90% of the land is uninhabitable, where no vegetations can be grown. The seashores are also completely polluted, and plus there were more than 10,000 people that had to be fed. People are really living there becomes a bigger issue. So to compensate that, government started importing all canned food. So 90% of the food that is imported offer canned food. And you know, canned food is unhealthy. Believe it or not, Nauru is the most obese country in the world. Over 97% of men are obese and 93% of the women are obese. And Nauru is the country which has the most number of cases of type 2 diabetes. More than 40% of the people are affected, and heart and kidney diseases are more common, and even 90% of people are unemployed and they have no work to do. From the richest country, now they have left with nothing, and they are now eating canned food. So literally we can learn is that when we don't know how to maintain the resources, we are left into a drastic condition where we are led to suffering. What we are basically seeing is a world in a smaller scale. These people had nowhere else to go other than their nation Nauru. But in the outer world, there are many people who are living have chances to shift places. So even though anything goes wrong, they just shift places and make their lives better. But the motto doesn't change that to not cause exploitation itself. At one point, the world might end up in the same scenario. So that is one of the biggest threats. So this is where the government has failed in some condition. Now for us. So are we a major contributor to this climate change? So what if I tell you I come to your home and I open your fridge and I can tell you that whether you're sustainable or not? Sounds funny, but the concept is that the amount of food waste we do contributes to the climate change as well as the hunger which is caused in this world. So it is estimated that according to the United Nations of Food and Agriculture Organization, that 1/3 of the food that is produced in our world directly ends up in trash without even being consumed. And in America, it exceeds that itself. Like around 40% of the food that is produced end up at trash directly. And if we were able to take all the trashed food and give it to everybody, we will be able to feed around 1.8 billion people in this world. I'm saying again 1.8 billion people in this world. So there will be no hunger itself. We don't know how to conserve food and the resources itself in the very fundamental way. And how in climate change, like during the composition of the food materials, it releases methane gas. So this contributes to greenhouse effects. In globally, it contributes around 8%. 8% seem a small scale, but if I would take all the food waste and put it in one nation, it would rank at the third place world level after China, America, and food waste would be at the third position in terms of green gas emissions. So we know that how much drastic effects that we have caused in this food waste itself. So where does these food waste occur? Like food waste directly basically occurs when food is produced in excess. So we can take this as two instances: before sales and after sales. So there is some waste that is happening before sales also, and there is some waste majorly happening after sales also. So let's go to the before sales part. So during the process of producing the produce, what happens is like we want the best looking product. For example, even if a small worm has bored in one corner, that would be assumed that the whole thing is a waste, and we would end up trashing it. The same thing happens in every waste and every vegetable as possible. So in there itself, the product goes down, and while traveling, the vegetables might get crushed or it becomes squishy. So the vegetables don't make preferable to our standard of consumption. So waste takes place there, even though when it reaches us at our point and we buy it. So we buy in lot of quantities that we really need not buy it. So what happens there is like we end up storing in our fridges. So studies have shown that since 1960, our plate size have increased 38% and fridge volumes have increased 30% since 1972. So it clearly states that we are buying more products than rather we consume. And at the end of the day, we put it at trash and it totally goes to waste. Like all the resources, all the transport costs it has gone through, all the properties and the resources and the minerals and the fertilizers that we have put into it and all the work we have put into making that produce has all gone to waste. So it's clearly said that the amount of climate change that is caused in this and the in carelessness that we have done, that directly contributed in the hunger thing also. Food waste is a preventable problem, and addressing this would solve both climate change as well as hunger. We don't need any fancy innovation technologies to solve this hunger thing itself, because we already have the solution with us itself, because we produce a lot of food and we just need a way to distribute the food to everybody. And if you were able to do that, you would be able to mitigate climate change as well as as well as hunger, and we can build a stronger community. Every individual is some form of a contributor to this climate change. So now, for example, electric vehicles were implemented and innovation technology is there, and you might argue about it, but people don't know the statistical data on where does this electricity come from, and where does these batteries are made, and how are these batteries made, like from where are these resources are coming from. They don't understand the very fundamental itself, and they say, oh, electric vehicle is something very sustainable, and that becomes complete nonsense. Where for me, like, to get lithium mines had to take place, over 65% of the underground water is totally exhausted. So how is it a sustainable way? Developed countries develop themselves. Rather, they don't do these things in their nations, but they come to a poorer nations where the economy is very low. They take all the resources, and at the end of the day, they're the ones who are benefited, and the lower economic countries are the ones who are suffering. The first question that I asked was, where does this change really happen? So, change is something you don't need to ask anybody, basically. You don't have to be an environmentalist, you don't have to be a lawyer, you don't have to be a judge, you don't have to be an MLA, you don't have to be a member of any legislative assembly, or you don't have to be any of it, or you don't have to be the president, you don't have to be a council UN minister, you don't have to be anybody. The thing is that you just have to be you and understand the change in you is a change in the environment. Like basically the environment is changing for us, because we need to make our things happen and make our lives easier in some way or another, and knowingly unknowingly we put people to suffering. The thing happens when we start accepting our mistakes, that really we have done something wrong and we are the ones who are traveling in the same platform, and we must take that change to at least have an empathy on how we destroy our environment or how it would affect. And everybody won't be happy to go to a picnic where it's totally dumb, right? You want some place which is really beautiful and clean. So it's our responsibility that our mother nature has given us, and to safeguard our environment. And I think that is the prime responsibility for each and every individual, irregardless of who we are, how we are, and how are the ways we are brought from. So this is my message, that try to change yourself in a way that we benefit our environment, and ask what we really need and demand what we really want, rather than I don't want things to be a solution but a way to change life better. Solutions won't work, but certain changes might make lives better.